Soul caster.
They thought I was too old to fight back, too soft, too sentimental, too slow to notice the noose tightening around my neck. The moment I stepped into that overlit, overpriced restaurant, I knew something was wrong. My son didn't stand to hug me. My granddaughters weren't there. Candace, my daughter-in-law, was already seated, perfectly still, like she'd been rehearsing this. Her lipstick didn't move when she smiled. That smile, it wasn't for me. On the table sat a manila envelope. No flowers, no cake, no happy birthday, Mum. I stood there for a second, trying to make it make sense. I was wearing the blue dress I saved for special occasions. I even curled my hair, old-fashioned but neat. Raymond always liked it that way. I thought we'd celebrate with something that actually matters, Candace said, sliding the envelope toward me with her fingernail. I didn't sit. I opened it standing. Not because I wanted the upper hand, but because I already knew what was inside. Property transfer. The deed. Notarized blanks ready for my signature. My voice was flat. The house? My son, eyes locked on the wine glass he hadn't touched, mumbled, "It's just paperwork, Mum. We can't keep living under your roof." My roof. My husband's hands cut those beams himself. 42 years ago, before my son was even born. That roof had kept the cold off his baby crib, kept storms out when he was sick with the flu at 7, held in the laughter from birthday parties and the screaming matches during his teenage years. "You mean the roof your father and I built," I said, finally sitting down. My bones were shaking, not from age, from fury. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and walked away from the table as if I needed to take a call. I didn't need to. I'd been waiting for this moment for over a year. "Now?" said the voice on the other end. Calm, professional. "Yes, now," I said, and hung up. And just a quick aside, if you're still reading this and you haven't subscribed yet, do it. More than 99% of readers don't, and believe me, the stories coming will make your jaw hit the floor. Plus, it helps our small team keep digging into these stories most people are too scared to tell. I walked back to the table like I was returning from the bathroom. Candace had already poured herself a second glass of wine. She didn't offer me any. I watched her sip, eyes gleaming, like she already saw herself knocking down the garden wall and putting in a pool. "I'm not signing today," I said. Candace's smile didn't fade. It sharpened. "If you want to keep seeing the girls, I suggest you reconsider." I looked at my son. His jaw was clenched, but he said nothing. Cowardice has a sound. It's the silence of a grown man watching his mother get devoured and doing nothing to stop it. I placed the pen gently next to the envelope. "No." Candace leaned forward like a vulture. "Then this is your last birthday with them." And just like that, she ripped off the mask, not even trying to hide it anymore. 10 minutes passed in silence. The waiter brought coffee. No one drank. Then the doors opened. Everyone in the restaurant turned, but I didn't. I knew who was coming. 2 people stepped in, one older, one younger, both dressed sharper than the knives on the table. Candace's face went ghost pale. I folded my napkin. "You remember Mr. Fallon from the probate court, don't you?" I said. No one answered. Because now they knew. I hadn't walked into their trap. They had walked into mine. Raymond had always been the buffer between me and the worst parts of the world. Even when cancer sunk its claws into him, he still tried to shield me. He kept the details light, sugar-coated the prognosis, made jokes in the hospital bed. "We've survived worse, Mags," he'd whisper when the nurses left. But this was different. We both knew it. The day we got the results, I sat in the car for a long time after he went inside. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and for the first time in decades, I prayed out loud. Not for him to be cured. That felt greedy. Just for enough time to keep him home, to say goodbye properly. But while I was bracing for loss, Candace was already calculating what she could gain. The signs came slowly. Then all at once, an envelope from the county assessor's office was opened before it reached me. My name was spelled wrong on our gas bill for the first time in 40 years, changed to hers. My son started making vague comments about streamlining responsibilities and how much easier things could be if we simplified the estate now while you're both still here. Still here. Like we were ghosts already. One afternoon, I caught Candace in the study flipping through our fireproof file box. She didn't hear me at first, too busy scanning the deed. When she looked up, she smiled like I'd offered her pie. "Just organizing. You know how chaotic paperwork can be." I nodded, pretended I was grateful, then spent that night copying every file in that box and storing the copies with a neighbor. When Raymond's health declined and hospice took over, my son suggested moving in to help out. I said yes. I was too tired to argue, and the girls brought some light into the house. But the help came with hooks. They gutted the kitchen for resale value, painted the den a cold, modern grey. My teacups disappeared. Family portraits came down and were replaced with stock art. I became an unpaid nanny and full-time maid, folding their laundry while my own sat in a basket untouched. I overheard her one day on the phone while I was folding towels. "Once it's in our name, we can finally sell this outdated place and get something better. Something that doesn't smell like old people and regret." She didn't know I was there. Or maybe she did and just didn't care anymore. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I simply finished folding the towels and put them neatly on the bed. That night, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Raymond's old army friend, Thomas Fallon. He'd retired from the bench, but still had his teeth. "I need protection," I said, "and I need you to believe me." He didn't hesitate. We met in secret over coffee every 2 weeks. I documented every incident, every bank statement, every time they intercepted a letter, every whispered conversation I caught through the air vents. Fallon helped me set up a living trust. We restructured the deed. We created a trigger clause that would invalidate any unauthorized attempt to transfer property. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ironclad. I also had cameras installed. Not in a creepy way, just discreetly in shared spaces. Anything to cover myself. Anything to gather evidence. They kept underestimating me. Thought grief had made me soft. But grief had sharpened me. When Raymond finally passed, they didn't even wait a week before suggesting we list the house. "Fresh start," they said. "Clean break." I smiled, told them I needed a little time to heal. Then I kept cooking their dinners and picking the girls up from school. I played my part like a sweet, broken woman clinging to memories. But behind my quiet, wrinkled hands was a pen, documenting everything. Behind my silence was strategy, and behind my sorrow was something Candace never expected from a woman her age: patience. Candace blinked once, slow, like her brain hadn't caught up to what her eyes were seeing. The colour drained from her face so fast, I thought she might faint into her overpriced wine. My son, Michael, just stared. At the briefcases, at the suits, at me. Fallon didn't speak right away. He didn't have to. His presence was enough. He had the slow, deliberate walk of a man who knew the law and knew he was holding a loaded weapon, metaphorically speaking. The younger woman with him, sharp cheekbones, tighter suit, eyes that looked like they'd dissect a lie before it left your lips, set her briefcase down at the edge of the table with a satisfying click. I folded my napkin slowly, deliberately, and placed it beside my untouched coffee. "You remember Mr. Fallon from probate court, don't you?" I said. "He presided over Raymond's estate review. Such a shame you both skipped the hearing." Candace recovered first. Of course she did. She leaned back in her chair, trying for bored indifference. "This is highly inappropriate. We were having a private family discussion." "Were you?" Fallon said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Because what I heard sounded a lot like coercion of a vulnerable elder. That's a felony in this state." She flinched at the word felony, then turned to Michael like he'd magically grow a spine. He didn't. He just stared down at the sugar packet he was turning into confetti in his lap. I looked at my son, my only child, and for one brief second, something in my chest ached, not from betrayal, but from the memory of a little boy who used to climb into my lap and ask if monsters were real. I wanted to believe that part of him still existed somewhere. But monsters grow up. Sometimes they marry worse monsters. Fallon opened the file and laid out a document. "This is a cease and desist order, effective immediately. You are to refrain from any further attempts to coerce, intimidate, or manipulate Mrs. Hale regarding the transfer of her property. Any further attempts will be considered criminal." Candace snorted. "You can't be serious. This is our family. You don't get to just march in here and—" "Oh, I'm very serious," Fallon replied, tapping the second folder. "And if you'd like to continue this conversation in front of a judge, I'm sure we could accommodate that." She looked at Michael again, this time desperate. "Say something. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at me. "Mom, you don't have to do this. We're just trying to build a future for the girls." "The girls who weren't even invited to my birthday dinner?" I said coolly. He winced. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm reacting. After 3 years of silence." The younger woman, Fallon's associate, reached into her briefcase and retrieved a small audio device. "Would you like us to play back the recording from earlier, or will you confirm what was said?" Candace went rigid. "Recording?" "I've been recording every conversation," I said evenly, not breaking eye contact. "Since the week after your father died. I wasn't sure then, but I'm sure now." The silence that followed was violent. My son looked nauseous. Candace was visibly sweating. The leather of her chair squeaked when she shifted her weight. Fallon leaned back and crossed one leg over the other. Also worth noting, Mrs. Hale's assets were moved into a revocable living trust last year. Even if she wanted to give you the house, she couldn't. It no longer legally belongs to her personally. Candace finally cracked. "You tricked us. You set us up." I stared at her for a long, cold second. "No, dear. You set the table. I just brought my own guests." She stood abruptly. "We're leaving." The younger woman blocked her. "You're not going anywhere until we finish our statement. You've made threats involving minor children, which now fall under additional scrutiny." Michael looked at me, finally seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time in years. "Why didn't you just talk to us?" he asked quietly. I smiled, the way women do when they've already buried the emotional body. "Because every time I did, you were too busy handing Candace the shovel." Mr. Fallon didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His words were sharp enough to carve silence into everyone at the table. "This is now a legal matter," he said, eyes locked on Candace. "You've made coercive threats against a vulnerable elder in an attempt to force her into surrendering real property under duress. That is criminal conduct under both state and federal statute." He slid the cease and desist order across the table like a dealer tossing a losing hand. "You are formally ordered to terminate all efforts to interfere with Mrs. Hale's assets. Violation of this order will result in legal proceedings, including but not limited to criminal prosecution." Candace glanced at the paper, then at Michael. Her neck flushed red. "This is absurd. You can't just come in here and—" "I recorded the entire conversation," I interrupted quietly, clearly. My son's head snapped toward me. You recorded us?" I nodded. "Every conversation, since the week after your father died. Voice memos, transcripts, security camera footage. I've got audio of you talking about flipping the house before the funeral food had even gone cold." Michael looked like he'd just been slapped. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Like he couldn't figure out if he was more shocked by my words, or that I had finally stopped pretending not to hear. Candace tried to push back from the table, eyes darting toward the exit. But Fallon's associate, the younger woman in the suit, took one step to the side and blocked her path without blinking. "We'll need a formal statement before you go. I suggest you stay seated." "You have no right," Candace began, but her voice cracked halfway through. "We have every right," the associate replied smoothly. "Especially since you invoked child visitation as leverage. That constitutes custodial threat. And if you don't want CPS crawling through your life tomorrow morning, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully." Candace sat. For the first time since she entered my life, she didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't manipulate the air in the room like she usually did. She just sat, small and shaking. I turned to Michael. "You want the truth? I moved the house into a living trust 6 months ago. Irrevocable. It belongs to the Hale family trust. You couldn't take it, but even if I wanted to hand it to you on a silver platter." He looked pale. Not angry, not even ashamed, just hollow. "But you needed to be honest," I said, louder now. "You needed to talk to me, not steal from me while I was still setting a place for you at the dinner table." His mouth opened again, and I saw the child in him. The boy who'd once believed I could fix anything with a Band-Aid and hot cocoa. But I was no longer reaching for comfort. I was holding a mirror. Candace suddenly snapped, her voice sharp. "We did this for the girls. You live like it's still 1985, with that dusty wallpaper and creaky porch. You're clinging to a house like it's a person." I stared at her. "It is a person," I said. "Every corner holds memories you'll never understand. That porch held Raymond's hand-stitched rocking chair. The wallpaper, my mother helped me paste it up when I was pregnant with Michael. The only dusty thing in that house was your intentions." She recoiled. Michael covered his face with his hands. Fallon closed the file and nodded to me. "Would you like to press charges, Mrs. Hale?" "No," I said. Candace exhaled in relief too early. "I don't need a court to fix this. I just needed you both to hear yourselves. And I needed witnesses." Fallon and his associate stood, collected their things, and stepped back. "I'll give you 5 minutes to say whatever's left to say," he told them before walking toward the exit. Neither of them moved. Michael looked at me, voice thin. Are you going to keep us from seeing the girls?" I shook my head. "I'm not you." His relief turned quickly into confusion. Then what happens now? That's up to you, I said. But I won't let you weaponize my love again. That part of me is done. I stood, smoothed my dress, picked up my coat. For the first time all evening, I realized the music in the restaurant had stopped. Or maybe it had never been playing. It didn't matter. Because the only thing I could hear clearly now was the sound of a boundary finally snapping into place. The cool night air hit me like a second wind as I stepped outside the restaurant. The stars were painfully clear, mocking in their stillness. Parked just across the street, the dark blue Subaru idled quietly. And in the back seat, two small faces lit up when they saw me. They waved. I waved back. A sharp, simple motion. I didn't dare smile. If I smiled, I'd break. Instead, I held it together, barely, as I walked to the curb. Linda, an old friend from my church circle, sat in the driver's seat. She rolled the window down halfway. "You sure you're okay?" she asked, eyes scanning me like a nurse checking vitals. I nodded. "Drive them home. Keep them tonight." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Behind me, the door opened. Footsteps, slower than before. Fallon came to stand beside me, hands in his coat pockets. "We can file charges if you want. Emotional manipulation, custodial threats, attempted financial exploitation. It's all on tape." I shook my head. No court can fix this. He studied me. "You sure?" I nodded again. What I needed tonight didn't come from a courtroom. He waited, respectfully, then walked away. A second set of footsteps followed. These, I knew by heart. Heels heavier than they used to be. My son. "Mum," Michael said. I didn't turn around. "You really won't even talk to me?" I looked at the car one last time. Linda pulled away slowly. The girls waved through the window until they were gone. Only then did I speak. "You already said enough." And then I walked past him, down the sidewalk, one steady step after another, until his voice faded behind me. Back home, the house was dark, still smelled like lavender and dust and memory. I didn't turn on the lights, just moved through it by feel, the same way I always had. Only this time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. I made tea, didn't drink it. I opened the old wooden photo box from the hall closet, sat at the kitchen table flipping through decades. A young Raymond, shirtless, fixing the porch railing. Michael as a toddler, beaming with frosting on his nose. Christmas mornings, graduation days. The first ultrasound of our granddaughter, still folded in the same paper frame we made together. I could have kept the illusion, could have signed everything over, smiled through it, begged for time with my grandchildren like a guest requesting an extra hour at a hotel. But I chose truth, and truth doesn't always hold your hand. I went to bed in my room, alone. My room, my bed, my house. I fell asleep without dreaming. The next morning, a letter slid through the slot in the front door. Cream envelope, no return address, but I didn't need one. Inside, custody papers, filed by Michael. A request for full guardianship. A claim of mental instability and undue paranoia on my part. His handwriting on the form was still shaky. He'd never been good with paperwork. I didn't cry. I called Fallon. "Already on my desk," he said. "They're bluffing, and we've got them cornered. Don't worry." I didn't. But I also didn't pretend it didn't sting. There's a strange weight to watching someone choose paperwork over reconciliation. But that's what this was. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to wound. Too late for that. That night, I lit a fire in the old hearth, ate dinner in silence, let the warmth creep over my feet. It was the kind of quiet that used to feel empty. Now it just felt honest. They might come after the house again. They might weaponize the girls. They might twist stories and drag my name through polite conversations with their smug suburban friends. But none of that mattered anymore, because I'd seen the worst version of them, and I didn't blink.